Imagine a person who owns hundreds of millions of dollars in assets. They manage entire companies, influence global markets, and make decisions that impact thousands of jobs. But if you try to find their name in Forbes, in shareholder registries, or even in tax documents, you will find nothing. Absolutely nothing. This person is a ghost. They exist, but they are not there. Welcome to the era of the ghost class, a new layer of the ultra-wealthy who have learned to become invisible, thanks to artificial intelligence. While the world discusses billionaires with their yachts and mansions, a true revolution of wealth is happening in the shadows. And today, I'm going to show you exactly how it works. Let's start with a simple question. What makes a person wealthy and visible? Traditionally, it's assets. Real estate in your name, company stocks, yachts in the ports of Monaco, private jets with registration numbers. Every one of these assets leaves a trail, a digital trail, a paper trail, a trail that can be used to find you. But what if I told you that artificial intelligence has rewritten these rules? In 2024, a silent coup took place. A few tech companies that you've probably never heard of launched a new generation of automated asset management platforms. These aren't just investment apps. These are entire ecosystems that create multi-layered ownership structures using AI. Here is how it works. Imagine you want to buy commercial real estate worth $50 million. In the past, you would have created a company, registered it, bought the property, and your name would appear in the documents. Maybe through an offshore structure, but a trail would still remain. Now, however, AI creates a chain of 12 legal entities for you across 7 jurisdictions. Each one owns a stake in the next. The nominee directors are other AI-managed services. Documents are automatically generated, digitally signed, and registered. Everything is legal. Everything follows the letter of the law. But finding you in that chain? It's like looking for a specific drop of water in the ocean. The key to understanding the ghost class is understanding exactly how AI creates anonymity. There are 3 revolutionary technologies working together. The first is the automated creation of corporate structures. Modern AI platforms can create a complex network of companies, trusts, and foundations in a matter of hours. They analyze the laws of hundreds of countries, find the optimal jurisdictions, automatically fill out documents, and even predict which structures will attract the least attention from regulators. What used to require an army of lawyers and months of work now takes a few clicks. The second technology is dynamic asset management. Imagine your property is constantly moving. Not physically, of course, but legally. AI automatically redistributes ownership stakes between various structures based on changes in tax laws, geopolitical risks, or even which countries are tightening capital controls. You might own an asset today through a company in Singapore, a month later, through a fund in Luxembourg, 6 months later, through a trust on the island of Jersey. The asset remains the same, but its ownership structure constantly mutates like a virus, evading an immune system. And the third, most powerful technology, AI-generated nominee, directors, and beneficiaries. This is where it gets truly futuristic. There are systems that create entirely virtual personas. Not in the sense of fake documents. That would be illegal. No, these are real people who are officially registered as directors, but who are entirely managed by AI. It could be a retiree from a small town who agreed, for a small fee, to be a nominee director. They don't even know what the company owns. All decisions are made by AI. All documents are signed by AI via digital signatures. The human is just a face, a mask, behind which the real owner remains hidden.
You might be thinking, this sounds like a conspiracy theory. How many people like this could there really be? Let me give you some numbers that will shock you. According to estimates by several independent financial analysts, in 2025, between $1.5 to $2 trillion is flowing through AI-managed anonymous structures. That is more than the GDP of most countries in the world. We aren't talking about dozens of people. We are talking about a new class of approximately 50 to 70,000 individuals worldwide. People who own significant assets but remain completely outside the public sphere. And the most interesting part, many of them weren't wealthy to begin with. This is a new generation of entrepreneurs. They made their money in cryptocurrency, tech startups, or data trading. And unlike the wealthy generations of the past, they chose invisibility from the very start. Why be on the Forbes list if it only attracts tax authorities, regulators, and sometimes criminals? Why be seen when you can live peacefully, owning entire blocks of real estate, venture funds, and tech companies, all while remaining a person without a face? Let's try to build a profile of a typical representative of the ghost class. It isn't necessarily a grey-haired banker from Switzerland. It's more likely a 35-year-old developer from Tallinn, or a 40-year-old entrepreneur from Singapore, or a 28-year-old trader from Austin. What unites them? First, technological literacy. They understand blockchain, AI, and automation. They don't fear technology. They use it as a tool. Second, global thinking. They aren't tied to one country. They might have 3 passports, 5 residences, and 0 emotional attachment to flags. They are citizens of the world in the most pragmatic sense. Third, radical pragmatism. They don't need recognition. They don't need fame. They need freedom. The freedom to move capital, the freedom to make decisions, and the freedom from the excessive attention of the state and society. And finally, access. Access to the right platforms, the right advisors, and the right technologies. This isn't a mass market. These are services that aren't advertised on the internet. It's word of mouth among the initiated. Let me tell you a specific story. The names have been changed, but the essence is absolutely real. Alex is a developer from Eastern Europe. In 2021, he created a small tool for automating cryptocurrency trading. The tool took off. In 2 years, Alex earned about $80 million. The problem? He realized that if this money hit his personal account, he would pay massive taxes. Plus, his country has a complicated relationship with the European Union. His capital could be frozen for political reasons. Alex turned to a specialized platform. Let's call it Structure AI. Within a month, the system built the following architecture for him. A foundation in Liechtenstein owns a holding company in Singapore. The holding company owns a company in Estonia. That company owns his intellectual property and crypto assets. The nominee directors at every level are people managed through the AI platform. All transactions are automated. Alex pays a subscription to the platform, $50,000 a year. That's it. His effective tax rate? Less than 5%. The chance of finding him as the owner? Practically 0. But the most interesting part is what came next. A year and a half later, Alex decides to buy a small tech company in the United States. The purchase isn't made in his name, but through one of the layers of his structure. In the documents, the owner is listed as the foundation from Liechtenstein. American regulators check the foundation. Everything is legal. Everything is clean. They don't see Alex. 3 years later, Alex owns 7 companies in 5 different countries. His personal net worth is about $250 million. But if you type his name into a search engine, you'll only find an old LinkedIn profile and a couple of photos from conferences. He is a ghost. Wealthy, influential, but absolutely invisible.
Of course, every technology has a dark side, and the ghost class is no exception. The first problem is taxes. When a significant portion of the world's wealth becomes invisible, states lose trillions in tax revenue. This is money that could have gone toward education, medicine, and infrastructure. But the members of the ghost class would argue they are playing by the rules. They use legal structures. If the state wants more taxes, it should change the laws. The second problem is money laundering. When the real owner is impossible to find, the system becomes ideal for criminals. Drug cartels, corrupt officials, arms dealers, all of them can use the same technologies. And this is where the arms race begins. Regulators create AI to find hidden owners. The ghosts create AI for even deeper concealment. It's cat and mouse, but at the level of algorithms. The third problem is perhaps the most philosophical. When the wealthy become invisible, social responsibility disappears. In the past, if you were wealthy and famous, society could pressure you. Philanthropy, ethical business, contributing to the community, all of this was partly a result of public visibility. But if you are a ghost, you owe no one anything. You are outside the social contract. So, what lies ahead? Where is this phenomenon heading? Experts highlight several scenarios. Scenario 1. Total invisibility. AI becomes so powerful that creating and managing anonymous structures becomes accessible to almost any wealthy person. In 10 years, half of the world's wealth flows through ghost structures. States lose control over capital. The era of a new financial feudalism begins, where the visible economy is for regular people, and the invisible one is for the elites. Scenario 2. The regulatory war. States unite to create a global ownership tracking system. New technologies, blockchain for transparency, AI for relationship analysis, international data sharing agreements. The ghost class is forced back into the light. But this requires an unprecedented level of international cooperation, which seems unlikely. Scenario 3. The Great Split. The world divides into two systems: transparent jurisdictions, where everything is tracked and controlled, and shadow jurisdictions, small countries that specialize in services for the ghosts. Wealth flows into the shadows. Transparent countries fight for control, while shadow countries fight to attract capital. Which scenario is most likely? Honestly, probably a hybrid of all three. Some wealth will go into total shadow, some will be brought back under control, and some will exist in a gray zone. Let's step away from the technology for a moment and talk about deeper questions. Does a person have a right to financial privacy? On one hand, we all value privacy. We don't want anyone to know how much is in our account, what we buy, or how we spend our money. That is our personal business, but there is a difference between the privacy of an average person and the invisibility of a billionaire. When we are talking about giant sums that influence the economies of entire countries, it stops being just a personal matter. Think about this. Imagine one person owns 30% of the real estate in your city. They influence prices, housing availability, and the development of neighborhoods. But you don't know who they are. You cannot influence them. You cannot criticize them. They are a ghost shaping your reality. Is that fair? Or look at it from the other side. Imagine you created something valuable. You took risks. You worked hard. You created jobs, and now you have money. But the state wants to take half, or maybe more, and not necessarily to use it efficiently, but to distribute it through an inefficient bureaucracy. Don't you have the right to protect your property? This is a dilemma with no simple answer, and the ghost class is just a new chapter in the eternal struggle between individual freedom and the public good.
You might think, okay, interesting story about billionaires. Now, what does it mean for me? Actually, quite a lot. First, if wealth becomes invisible, it changes social dynamics. You don't know who is truly wealthy in your social circle. A neighbor driving an old Toyota might own $50 million worth of real estate through ghost structures, and the person in the Ferrari might be drowning in debt. Visible consumption stops being an indicator of wealth. And that changes everything, from how we perceive success to how we build relationships. Second, it affects inequality. When the wealthy pay fewer taxes, the tax burden falls on the middle class. That's you and me. We pay for the roads, the schools, the hospitals, while the ghosts move their billions through offshores. Third, it changes the very nature of power. In the past, power was visible. Kings, presidents, industrial magnates, you could see them, study them, and influence them. But how do you influence someone you can't see? How does society control invisible elites? However, there is an optimistic view of the situation. The technologies creating the ghost class are gradually becoming more affordable. What cost millions 5 years ago and was available only to the ultra-rich can now be obtained for tens of thousands of dollars. And in 5 years, perhaps for thousands, or even hundreds. This means the democratization of financial privacy. It won't just be billionaires who can protect their assets. It will be successful entrepreneurs, freelancers working with international clients, people living in countries with unstable regimes. Imagine a dissident in an authoritarian country who can keep their funds out of reach of a repressive government, or an entrepreneur in a country with hyperinflation protecting their family's savings. In this context, invisibility technology is not an evil. It is a tool for freedom. We are living in a turning point in history. For the first time in human history, technology has given us the ability to own significant wealth while remaining completely invisible. Artificial intelligence has rewritten the rules of a game that has been played for thousands of years. The ghost class is not science fiction. It is a reality unfolding right now. As I speak these words, somewhere an algorithm is creating a new corporate structure. Somewhere, assets are flowing from one jurisdiction to another. Somewhere, a person is becoming an invisible millionaire. Is this good or bad? It depends on which side you're looking from. For states, it's a challenge. For societies, it's a risk of rising inequality. For regulators, it's an arms race. But for the individual, it's a new form of freedom. Freedom from excessive control, from confiscation, and from political risks. What kind of world do we want? A world where every financial transaction is tracked, or a world where people can maintain privacy even if they are wealthy? A world of absolute transparency? Or a world where people have the right to the shadows? These questions will define the next decade, and the technologies we discuss today are just the beginning. The ghost class is already here. It is growing, it is evolving, and the most interesting part, you might not even know that one of them is sitting right next to you. Maybe it's your colleague, maybe your neighbor, maybe even the person you see in the mirror. In the end, in a world where invisibility is becoming accessible, the question isn't whether the ghost class exists. The question is, will you become a part of it? Remember, in the digital age, the greatest luxury is not visible wealth. It is invisible freedom. Thank you for being with me. Think, analyze, and remember, the world is changing faster than we can keep up with. Until next time.